Mike Tyson talks about his prison years now with something close to gratitude. "Those 3 years saved my life," he said in interviews. "I was spiraling. I needed to stop, to think, to grow up." But on February 10, 1992, when a jury in Indianapolis convicted him of rape and a judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison, Mike wasn't thinking about growth. He was thinking about his career, his freedom, his life falling apart at 25 years old. He entered the Indiana Youth Center on March 26, 1992. Prisoner number 9222335. The baddest man on the planet was now an inmate. He was at the peak of his athletic prime, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, worth millions. And now he'd spend the next 3 years behind bars while his career, his body, and his legacy deteriorated. He was released on March 25, 1995. 3 years later, 28 years old. The prime years of a fighter's life, gone. He walked out to cameras, chaos, and Don King waiting to control what was left of his career. He smiled for the press, said the right things. But the Mike who left prison wasn't the same Mike who entered. The question is, was he better or just more broken? In 1991, Mike Tyson was still on top. He'd lost to Buster Douglas the year before, a shocking upset that embarrassed him. But he was rebuilding, training, fighting again. He knocked out Henry Tillman and Alex Stewart. The comeback was real. Promoters were already talking about rematches, big paydays. Mike was only 25. He had time to reclaim everything, but off the canvas his life was chaos. The divorce from Robin Givens had destroyed his reputation. His trainer Kevin Rooney was gone. Don King had slithered into his camp, controlling finances and decisions. Mike was rich but rudderless, famous but isolated. He partied, he spent, he made bad decisions, and in July 1991 he went to Indianapolis for the Miss Black America pageant. That's where he met Desiree Washington. She was 18, a contestant, a college student with her whole life ahead of her. What happened in Mike's hotel room that night on July 19, 1991, became a legal battle that divided public opinion. Desiree said Mike raped her. Mike said it was consensual. The details were graphic, the trial was brutal, and the jury believed her. Mike didn't take it seriously at first. He thought his fame would protect him, that juries wouldn't convict a celebrity, that somehow it would all go away. It didn't. The trial began in January 1992, Indianapolis. Courtroom 4, Judge Patricia Gifford presiding. Mike sat at the defense table in a suit looking uncomfortable. His lawyer, Vincent Fuller, argued consent. The prosecution, led by Gregory Garrison, argued rape. Desiree Washington testified. Calm, detailed, emotional. She described what happened, how Mike called her at 2 a.m., how she went to his hotel room thinking they'd go to a party, how he assaulted her. Mike's defense was weak. His lawyer didn't put character witnesses on the stand, didn't call women who'd been with Mike before to testify about his usual behavior, didn't prepare Mike to testify convincingly. When Mike took the stand, he was arrogant, dismissive. He heard his own case. The jury saw a man who didn't respect women, who felt entitled, who thought the rules didn't apply to him. On February 10, 1992, the jury came back, guilty, on all 3 counts. The courtroom erupted. Mike's face went blank. Desiree Washington cried. Outside, the media exploded. On March 26, 1992, Mike was sentenced to 6 years in prison with 4 years suspended. He'd serve at least 3 years behind bars. The boxing world was stunned. Fans were divided. Some believed Desiree. Some believed Mike was set up. Some didn't care either way. They just wanted to see him fight again. But none of that mattered now. Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, was going to prison. March 26, 1992. Mike Tyson walked into the Indiana Youth Center in Plainfield, Indiana. It wasn't a celebrity prison. It was a real facility with real criminals. Prisoner number 922335. The intake process was humiliating. Strip search, medical exam, standard issue clothes. He wasn't Iron Mike anymore. He was just another inmate. The first few weeks were brutal. Mike was in protective custody initially because of his fame. Other inmates shouted at him, taunted him. Guards treated him like anyone else. There were no special privileges, no training equipment, no entourage, just a cell, a bed, and time. So much time. Mike later described the shock of losing everything. I went from being the most famous athlete in the world to wearing a number. I couldn't train, couldn't fight, couldn't do anything. I had to sit there and think about what I'd done, where my life had gone. For a man who'd spent his entire life moving, training, fighting, running, sitting still was torture. He was angry at Desiree Washington, at his lawyers, at the justice system, at himself. He cycled through denial, rage, and depression. He wrote letters, made phone calls, filed appeals. But the reality settled in slowly. He was going to be here for years, and there was nothing he could do about it. The Indiana Youth Center became Mike's world. He woke up at 5 a.m., ate breakfast in the cafeteria, worked in the prison laundry or maintenance, lunch, yard time if the weather allowed, dinner, lights out at 9 p.m., day after day, month after month. The monotony was crushing. But something began to shift. Mike started reading. He'd never been much of a reader before, but in prison, books became an escape. Philosophy, history, biographies. He read about Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and other fighters who'd faced adversity. He started thinking about his life differently, about the choices he'd made, the people he'd hurt, the talent he'd wasted. He also converted to Islam. He'd been introduced to the religion before, but in prison, it gave him structure. A Muslim cleric named Muhammad Siddiq visited regularly. Mike prayed 5 times a day, studied the Quran, found peace in the discipline. He took the name Malik Abdulaziz, though he rarely used it publicly. The faith didn't erase his past, but it gave him a framework to process it. Physically, prison was hard. He couldn't train the way he used to. No sparring, no heavy bags, just push-ups, sit-ups, and whatever he could do in his cell or the yard. His body changed. He lost muscle mass, his timing, his reflexes. The things that made him great deteriorated. Every day in prison was a day further from his prime. 3 years is a long time to sit with your mistakes. And Mike Tyson spent those years wrestling with who he was and who he wanted to become. He didn't emerge from prison a perfect man, but he emerged different. The books changed him first. He read everything he could get his hands on. Machiavelli, Voltaire, Hemingway. He read about Alexander the Great and Napoleon. He studied philosophers and warriors. He wasn't just passing time. He was trying to understand power, ego, and what happens when both are left unchecked. I realized I'd been a fool, he said later. I had all this power, all this fame, and I used it for nothing. I destroyed everything I touched. He wrote letters to people he'd wronged. Some were never sent. Some were. He thought about Cus D'Amato, the man who'd saved him, and how disappointed Cus would be. He thought about his mother, who died when he was 16, and how she never got to see him become champion. He thought about Robin Givens, the public humiliation, the spiral that followed. He thought about all the trainers, managers, and friends he'd pushed away or betrayed. And he thought about Desiree Washington. In early interviews after his release, Mike maintained his innocence. I didn't rape her, he'd say. But as years passed, his language softened. He stopped talking about the case entirely. In therapy decades later, he acknowledged that even if he didn't believe he committed rape, his behavior toward women had been abusive. Entitled wrong. I treated women like objects, he admitted. I thought my fame meant I could do whatever I wanted. I was wrong. Prison forced Mike to confront a truth he'd avoided his whole life. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't untouchable, and his actions had consequences. For Desiree Washington, those consequences were trauma that would last a lifetime. For Mike, the consequence was losing 3 years, his prime, and the man he could have been. But prison also gave him something: time to stop, to breathe, to step off the treadmill of fame and destruction. If I hadn't gone to prison, Mike said years later, I probably would have died. Drugs, alcohol, recklessness. Prison saved me by forcing me to sit down and deal with myself. Whether that's redemption or just survival is up for debate, but it's something. March 25, 1995, the day Mike Tyson walked out of the Indiana Youth Center, was a circus. Helicopters overhead, news vans lined up, hundreds of reporters, cameras everywhere. And there, at the front of the chaos, was Don King, smiling, waving, ready to cash in. Mike emerged in a simple black suit, thinner than when he went in. Quieter. He read a prepared statement thanking his supporters, his faith, and his family. He didn't talk about the conviction. He didn't talk about boxing. He just wanted to go home. But Don King had other plans. Within hours, Mike was signing contracts. A comeback fight was announced. Millions of dollars were on the table. The hype machine started immediately. Iron Mike is back, the headline screamed. But the Mike who walked out of prison wasn't Iron Mike. He was 28 years old, 3 years removed from competition. His timing was gone, his reflexes dulled, his spirit fractured. Still, the boxing world was ready. Fans wanted to see if he still had it. Networks wanted the ratings. Promoters wanted the money. Mike fought Peter McNeely 4 months later, knocked him out in 89 seconds. The crowd went wild. Mike was back. But those who knew boxing saw the truth. He wasn't the same. He was slower, sloppier. He was winning on power and reputation, not skill. And lurking behind every victory was Don King, taking his cut, controlling Mike's money, isolating him from anyone who might help him rebuild properly. Prison hadn't saved Mike from predators. It had just delayed them. Today, Mike Tyson is 58. When he talks about his prison years, he's reflective, honest, sometimes regretful. He's done therapy, he's gotten sober, he's confronted his demons, and he's tried to make sense of what those 3 years meant. I deserve to go to prison, he said in recent interviews, not because I thought I was guilty of what they convicted me of, but because of how I lived, how I treated people, how I thought the world owed me something. I needed to be stopped, and prison stopped me. He's also acknowledged the harm he caused. To Desiree Washington, whose life was forever altered, to his family who watched him spiral, to the sport of boxing which lost its biggest star during his prime. I can't undo what I did, he said. All I can do is try to be better now. Desiree Washington has largely stayed out of the public eye. She's never wavered in her account of what happened. She's spoken occasionally about the impact of the assault and the trial. For her, Mike's redemption arc doesn't erase what happened that night in 1991. And she's right, it doesn't. The prison years are complicated. They destroyed Mike's career, cost him his prime, but they also forced him to confront himself in a way he never had before. Whether that makes them a tragedy or a blessing depends on who you ask. Maybe they're both. The 3 years Mike Tyson spent in prison are a turning point in his story. But they're not the story itself. They're a chapter, a dark one, a necessary one maybe, but just a chapter. Here's what's undeniable. Mike Tyson went into prison as a reckless, entitled, destructive force. He came out different, not perfect, not healed, but changed. He lost his athletic prime. He lost 3 years he'll never get back, and the boxing world lost the chance to see what Mike Tyson at 26, 27, 28 could have been at his absolute peak. But prison gave him something too, a forced pause, a reckoning, a chance to step off the path he was on, a path that was leading to an early grave. Did it make him a better person? Eventually, yes. Did it erase the harm he caused? No, nothing can. The legacy of Mike's prison years is complex. For Desiree Washington, they represent justice delayed and trauma that never fully heals. For Mike, they represent the cost of his actions and the beginning of a long, painful journey toward accountability. For boxing fans, they represent a prime lost and a comeback that was never quite the same. Here's the final question. If Mike Tyson hadn't gone to prison, would he still be alive today? Would he have spiraled further into drugs, alcohol, and self-destruction? Or would he have course-corrected on his own? We'll never know. But Mike believes prison saved his life. And maybe, in the cruelest irony of all, it did. One thing is certain, the 3 years Mike Tyson spent behind bars changed everything. The man who entered in 90 and the man who left in 90, not the same. And the fighter who came back was chasing a ghost, the ghost of the Mike Tyson who never got to exist.